Hello, everyone, and welcome to Surprise. We both love movies. This week, we're doing something a little different. We both picked a comedy movie, actually two comedy movies, for the other person to watch and review. We picked based off what we thought the other person would like, and we're going to see whether or not that was successful and ultimately declare a winner for who is the comedy movie pick champion. All right. So that's going to be this week's episode. So, my first movie that I picked for Aaron was the movie Dolomite Is My Name. Now, Dolomite Is My Name came out earlier this year on Netflix. It stars Eddie Murphy as Rudy Ray Moore. Rudy Ray Moore worked in a record store, cleaning up, helping out, and he always had aspirations to make his own music. That wasn't successful. And then all of a sudden, he had a lot of people that kind of came in the store and would say kind of off the wall things, kind of street poets, kind of, people that maybe weren't all there mentally, but they were interesting characters to watch. And so as he watched this, he decided he was going to make up a comedy character based off this. And the comedy character's name was Dolomite. Dolomite, he put out some records and they were successful. And then one was successful enough that he leveraged his royalties from that successful comedy album against a movie idea to make Dolomite not only an audio star, but a film star as well. In this movie, you see Eddie Murphy, the great American comedy actor, portraying Rudy Ray Moore as Dolomite. And I don't know how much Aaron knows about Dolomite before. It was the 1970s blaxploitation era, but I thought Aaron would enjoy this movie. So Aaron, after that little introduction and watching the movie, give me your feedback. Was it a hit or was it a miss? What did you think?
Well, I'll tell you at the end if it's a hit or a miss. But here's what I will tell you. I had never heard of Dolomite before, but I could tell you I've seen the posters before, which is interesting. Because when I was in the middle of this movie, I had to stop it and get online to see what I was watching. Because I was like, is this real? Or is this, something somebody made up? Was this just a comedy that they had thrown us into? Right. And I found out it was real. And I could not believe it. And so I watched some of the clips from these movies because apparently he made 7 movies after the first one, or a total of 7 films. I've never seen anything goofier than what they did in this movie. Now, I'm going to tell you what I liked and what I didn't like. I'll talk about what I didn't like first. First of all, it's way crass. Like, the language is off the charts. I almost had to turn it off after 25, 30 minutes because it was like every other word. But come to find out, that's the way this individual was in real life. So they were depicting it the way he portrayed himself in real life. So I didn't like that. It was a lot of nudity, too, which is not my thing. I don't care for nudity in movies. But again, they were depicting what this individual actually did in real life. He had a lot of album covers. Some of his comedy had a lot of nude women on the covers. So
I was about to say, I don't really remember any nudity, but you're right, on the covers.
Oh, there was quite a bit, actually. And so that stuff I didn't care for. I don't watch movies for that type of thing. And half an hour in, I'm wondering, is this going to be worth it for me? Because I didn't laugh at all in the first half an hour. Mm-hmm. Then it gets into where he starts talking about making the movie, and he goes in, he talks about how he wants to make action, humor, karate, he wants kung fu in there. And he starts acting like he doesn't know anything about kung fu. And I actually started to laugh at that stage. It was freaking hilarious. And when they started filming the movie, there's a scene, and I watched the actual scene after I watched this. I was like, is it really this bad? So he got another person to direct this film who'd been in films before, so knew his way around the camera, had been on set, and played by Wesley Snipes, actually. And so it was interesting to see him come out. It was a funny scene where they got Wesley Snipes to film the movie. They're outside. They're out in front of somebody's house. And they're filming a scene. And it was a scene where he was supposed to be caught with drugs in the trunk of his car. And we hadn't seen him do any action yet. And so these FBI agents come up, ask him to open the trunk. They take the drugs out and they say they're going to arrest him. And he didn't like that. So he starts doing karate moves. And it was horrible. He didn't come anywhere near the people. They were being thrown around. And I'm cracking up at this. And I'm like, was it really that bad? And it was funny because in the movie, Wesley Snipes looked at the guy who is cameraman and said, is there any way we can shoot this at an angle where that might look real? And his cameraman said, no, there's no possible way we can make this look real. So they just let it go. And then you find out as they continue to film this that it's meant to be an over-the-top comedy, goofy, just way out there type of film. And I actually watched the scene with the drugs in real life, the car, the scene, and it was like spot on to what they actually filmed in real life. So in the end, I really enjoyed this movie. I would recommend it if you can get past the language, the nudity and stuff like that. Yeah, especially the second half of the film, there's some heart at the end. Yeah. There's a really good scene with this female that he befriends in the beginning of the film, who he takes along the ride with him through this whole thing. And she's a bigger woman. She's not a skinny person. And she thanked him at the end for putting her in the film because nobody that looks like her, probably skin color and also weight-wise, gets to star in a movie like that. And she really thanked him. And it was a very heartfelt moment. And there's some heartfelt stuff at the very end, too, when they finally do premiere the movie. So I really enjoyed this.
Your score, though. Before you give your score, I'm going to just make this little comment. And it's a really interesting movie because it's just, you don't realize all the obstacles and, that there were at that time to make that kind of movie, the risk that he had to take. I think the people that he borrowed the money for the movie said, hey, if this doesn't work out, you're going to owe us the rest of your life.
Right.
And he still went ahead and put this movie out and had some success with it because he made 7 more. So in a way, Rudy Ray Moore is a pioneer of yes. African-American filmmaking. And that part of it, yes, there's a funny side of it. Yes, it's a character that's ridiculous and uses kung fu movies, but also there's a very serious side. And he was an innovator and a pioneer for filmmaking in the United States. But go ahead and let us know your final thoughts on this movie, Dolomite Is My Name.
I was interested to find out at the end that his movie actually made $10 million that year. I think it was 1975. And it made $10 million, which was, I think, in the top 3 top grossing films that year. So it was a big gamble, and it paid off for him. Like you said, he did 7 movies. So in the end, I would give this a 7.5 out of 10.
Wow.
Okay. And I really liked it. I would give it a lot higher if it didn't have the language and the nudity in it. I think if they could have made this, and you can't, because that's what happened in real life. It's the way he talked. It's what he did. And I understand that. Mm-hmm. Had that stuff not been in there, though, I would have bumped it up to 8, maybe 8.5, because it was actually a very enjoyable film. I think the first half is really not all that engaging because you really don't. There's nothing funny about it, and you're kind of having a hard time following along. He's like trying to make a name for himself and taking jokes from a homeless guy. And you're like, I'm watching this, and I didn't know anything about the movie at that stage. Like, I hadn't even watched a preview or anything. Mm-hmm. And so the first half an hour, I'm like, is this going to get good? Like, why did he give this to me as a comedy? Because it's not, like, there's nothing funny in it, but it definitely gets funny later on. So if you stick with it after that first half an hour, it does get really, really funny. So, yeah, I enjoyed it. So yeah, I would give it 7.5 out of 10.
All right.
Good.
All right. Good. All right.
All right. So the first movie that I gave you is a movie called Keeping Up with the Joneses, which stars a group of people. It stars John Hamm, Gal Gadot. You've got Zach Galifianakis, which totally cracked me up in the film. And you have, strangely enough, she's going to be in both the movies that I gave you, was Isla Fisher. Yes. So Isla Fisher's in this. And in this movie, Isla Fisher and Zach Galifianakis, I can't even say his name. Galifianakis. They're married. And they've gotten past that stage of infatuation with a marriage. They're like settled in. Okay. They've been married for a while and they're settled in, and he works for a software company in human resources, and John Hamm and Gal Gadot are married and they move in next door. And what you find out is that they work for the CIA, and they're actually there to stop some information being stolen from the company that Zach Galifianakis works for. This movie's a comedy. There's lots of action in it. And there were a couple of scenes in this movie that I found absolutely hilarious. And I really enjoyed the movie. So I want to find out what you thought of this film.
All right. So like you said, this, you recommended 2 movies with Isla Fisher in there. And I was like, I think think Aaron has a thing for Isla Fisher, but
I strangely I don't. She just happens to be in both the movies.
But I was Keeping Up with the Joneses. I hadn't really heard of this movie. I'd heard the title before, but I didn't know who was in it or what it was about. And I liked all the actors in it. Like you said, you mentioned all of them. John Hamm's in it as well. And it was a kind of a star-studded cast. The four main characters were characters that are actors that I've liked in several other movies. So I was like, Keeping Up with the Joneses. I don't know. We'll see what this is. And I started watching it, and it was kind of like, it's just basically like you said, it was kind of like this whole hum couple, and then they run in, this new couple moves into the neighborhood, and nobody knows anything about them and what's going on. And they're just so special and spectacular and sexy, and they do everything right. And then you find out that you're on this whirlwind of an adventure. How these normal everyday couple who just sent their kids off to camp are now realizing that they're involved in this United States espionage plot. And it was really like, I honestly have to say, I was surprised, because usually I'm kind of in touch with comedies that are out, and I hadn't heard of this one, and I was pleasantly surprised as I was watching it. Zach Galifianakis, he sometimes is over the top for me, but in this role, he played it perfectly. He
did
just the right amount of Zach Galifianakis, not too much,
no,
not too little. And he was able to be funny. And Isla Fisher was great in this movie as well. She does a great job. They complement each other very well. You'll believe that they're a couple, even though
yes, you do.
He's not that attractive, and she's very attractive. You still believe it. And
yeah, you do.
And the same thing with John Hamm and Gal Gadot's character. You believe that they were together, and it made the movie work. It really did.
It did.
Very, very more funny than I thought it was going to be. I was a little apprehensive when he said, Keeping Up with the Joneses. I was like, I don't know. But by the time I was finishing rounding third base to finish off this movie, I was like, this is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
So I was impressed.
So before you give your score, there's a couple things I want to mention about this movie. And I think a lot of people didn't see it like you did. Like I'm really hoping they would do a sequel to this movie. I think it lends itself to a sequel type of atmosphere. Now, what I really loved in this movie was Zach. Like you said, he was freaking hilarious. There is a chase scene in this movie where all four of them are in a car and they get chased, and they've never experienced anything like this. Then right after the action stops, immediately they're in a diner. And Zach is sitting in the thing like, holy crap, what the heck just happened? His wife's like, yeah, this was cool. And they're on the other side of the table, and they're talking about how are we going to make this all work? And he's like, what are you guys talking about? And he, the look on his face, he sold it as that guy who was happy with his life, and it's getting turned upside down. And it is really funny for people who haven't seen it. They try to emulate the Zach Galifianakis and Isla Fisher. They try to emulate these individuals. They want to be these individuals when they see how cool they are in the neighborhood. And I think this is kind of a moral of the story of be who you are.
Right.
You don't have to be that amazing thing, because it's not always greener on the other side. So it was, I enjoyed the movie. So what would you give this as a score?
All right. So as I would compare this movie to Mr. and Mrs. Smith on the dramatic side. This is Mr. and Mr. Smith of the comedy side. I felt like it was of equal value and entertainment value. So for a comedy, I was able to give this one an 8. It had some memorable scenes. Nice. It was funny. It kept me laughing throughout. And I would recommend it to anybody who hasn't had the opportunity to watch it. Watch Keeping Up with the Joneses. You'll have a good time. It's very funny. You can watch it with the whole family, I'm pretty sure, for the most part.
There's one scene with Gal Gadot in lingerie that's a little...
Yeah. Maybe for teenagers. Teenagers or, but not little kids, but, older kids, you'll be fine. It's fun.
Little questionable. But it is a PG-13 movie. So it is good. All right. So what is the second film you had me watch?
All right. So a few episodes ago, Aaron we were talking about movies. I think it was our pandemic show. And I said, have you ever seen 50 First Dates? Aaron said, no, I've never seen 50 First Dates. I was appalled and shocked. So needless to say, 50 First Dates was the movie that I picked for Aaron. And if you don't know, 50 First Dates stars Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore. And Adam Sandler's just a regular guy that's working at this like SeaWorld place in Hawaii. It's where they take care of the animals and they have shows just like that. And Drew Barrymore, she lives there. She doesn't know she lives with her family, and she lives with her dad and her brother. And one day they have a serendipitous, run-in at a local diner. And Adam Sandler introduces himself to her, and they kind of hit it off, and he's really likes her, and so he's gonna come back the next day and see her again. Unfortunately, when he comes back and sees her the next day, that's where you realize that everything, while in Hawaii, looks beautiful. Underneath, it always isn't beautiful, and you realize that she has an issue. She has an issue with her memory, and she doesn't remember things from one day to the next, and she has to be reminded of them. And I thought it made a very touching story and a very funny story, and so I thought, you know what? Aaron likes comedies that mean something. He doesn't just want something that's silly. This movie has a lot of meaning, so I recommended it to him. So, Aaron, what did you think after you finally had the opportunity to watch 50 First Dates?
What's funny is, my wife swore to me that we had seen this movie together, and I remember everything that I see. Okay, I don't forget stuff. Which usually, if I have seen something and I forget about it, that would usually mean that it left no impact on me, good or bad. It was straight down the middle. There are things about this movie that I do remember, like what's his name's character, the goofy guy. He's always goofy. Rob Schneider, playing Ula, okay, or Eula. I don't remember how they said it, but Rob Schneider's in it. Rob Schneider's in every single one of Stanham's, his movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the eye thing. Like, I clearly remember that. And I also remember Sean Astin's character, little bits and pieces. But outside of that, I don't remember anything. So I think maybe I've seen clips before, but I don't think I'd ever seen the movie itself. So I thoroughly enjoyed this movie all the way through. I got to say, this is one of the better comedies out there. It's something I would actually purchase and add to my collection. And this is one of the reasons why I don't think I've seen it in the past, because it would have had an impact. It would leave an impact. Was it overly hilarious? No, and there were a lot of jokes that did fall flat. I'd say there was about a half a dozen jokes that were really kind of shouldn't have really been in the film. And they're not dirty or anything. They were just fell flat. There was one when they went into the home where people have memory issues, and there were two guys talking to each other. And I don't remember what the joke was, but it was some guy drew something, and he's like, this other guy looked at it, and there were some comments back and forth, and it wasn't funny, but they tried to make it funny. And there were a few things in the film like that weren't very funny, but then there were other moments that were absolutely freaking hilarious. The two that stood out for me was when Sean Astin tried to do sit-ups from the chandelier. It comes crashing down, right? And then the other one is when he finally goes off to sail at one point, and he has this Beach Boys thing with him, and he's he says, why would he give this to me? I would never listen to this. He's terrible for giving it to me. And then the next scene, he's jamming out to it, and then he starts to cry and wail, and it was freaking hilarious. Like, that was the funniest part of the whole movie. And so I really enjoyed it, and it was heartwarming. Like, I really liked this movie a lot. It was innocent. It was fun. It's something the whole family could watch. And taking Rob Schneider out of it, I think his character was one that missed a lot more than he hit. He had a couple of funny things, but a lot of his stuff was he didn't fit the rest of the people in the film. He was a little too over the top. But the rest of the people were more real. Outside of him, though, great story, great music. It was really well done. So in the end, I would give this one a 9 out of 10. Yeah, it was good. It was good. I'm surprised for something I've never seen before. It's definitely not one of his crazy comedies like Waterboy or anything like that. So he was definitely he was an actual real person in this. And that's the one thing we don't get to see him do a lot, is do serious roles. And I know he was just in Uncut Gems, which I have not watched yet, but I hear he did a phenomenal job in that movie. So have you seen it?
I have. It's intense, is what I would say. It's intense.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to watch it soon. I've been meaning to watch it. I just haven't yet. But I like to see him do, because it was the same thing with the one he did from the 80s, also with her. The Wedding Singer was another one where he kind of played more of the real person. And it was the people around him that were more cartoonish. So
yeah, I wouldn't say it was a serious role, but I would say that it is more serious than a lot of his other roles.
Yes.
If you ever have an opportunity to see Rain on Me or Punch Drunk Love, those are movies where he plays more serious characters, or even Uncut Gems, and those are some serious characters where he really puts in a performance. So,
all right.
Well, that brings us He actually brings you
to the last film we're going to talk about today. And this is a film that I love as a guilty pleasure. I get thorough enjoyment out of this. And I watched all 4 movies this week in preparation for this. And I hadn't seen this movie in a while, but there are some scenes I will never forget. And it's a movie called Hot Rod, starring Andy Samberg and, strangely, Isla Fisher. So, and I actually had to look up how to say her name because I've never seen her in an interview, and her name is Isla, which I thought was strange.
Okay, right.
And
okay.
I'm not even sure if I'm saying Gal Gadot's name right. I've never seen her talk about her name either. I've heard people say Gal Gadot, some people say Gal Gadot. I just say Gal Gadot. But Isla Fisher is in this movie too. And this is an off-the-wall movie. Okay, this is a true comedy from beginning to end. And it's about Andy Samberg. They don't even tell how old they are. They act like teenagers, but I think they're in their 20s. But what's funny, when the movie was made, he's almost 30 years old. So he stars as a character. Actually, I forgot his name. I'm not going to pull it up right now. But he plays a character whose father used to be a stunt man, and his father died. So he's not orphaned. He's got his mom. And what's strange is his mom is played by
Sissy Spacek.
Sissy Spacek. Yeah. However you say her name. But yeah, to see her in this movie as his mom, like, you wouldn't see her doing a film like this, but she's in it. So she's his mom. She remarries a guy, and this guy constantly gets in fights with Andy Samberg. And Andy Samberg is trying to emulate his dad, and he's always going out trying to be a stunt man and doing crazy things around the neighborhood. And he's not usually very successful with the things that he does, and hilarity ensues. Now, at the same time, he finds out that his stepfather, ends up having a heart issue and needs a surgery. He needs to have heart surgery, and it's going to cost $50,000. Now, I don't know where you can get a heart surgery in America for $50,000, but in the movie, they said it was only going to cost $50,000. But he then sets off to do this. He has to come up with a plan to raise money to help his stepfather. So what he does is he coordinates to do a stunt where he's going to jump. I don't remember how many buses it was. It was one more than Evel Knievel did. So that's what this movie is, him getting ready and preparing to do that jump. And there are some funny scenes in this movie. There's one in particular that cracks me up no matter how many times I see it. But what did you think of this movie?
All right. So what I'm going to say is I'm a huge fan of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which stars Andy Samberg. Yep. Hilarious show.
Show is awesome.
One of my funniest favorite shows that I watch currently.
Yeah. And
so I'm excited because Andy Samberg's in it. Isla Fisher, she's in it. She's funny. Bill Hader from Saturday Night Live, Danny McBride, very funny actors.
Yes.
Each one of them in their own regards, funny comedians. And so I get ready, sit down in front of the TV. All right, here we go, ready to watch some comedy. And I watch it, and it's starting out. It's a little silly. It's a little goofy. That's all right. All right. It's okay. A little silly. He's still, like you said, he's like a man child. He's like 30 years old, but he's acting like he's like 17 or 18. I'm like, all right, I can get past that. He's silly on Brooklyn Nine-Nine. It's okay. But it just was too much of a gap for me for an extended period of time. It was like something that was like, they had a really good idea like years ago and decided, you know what? We all still look young enough. Let's go ahead and try to put this off. Thank you, Lauren Michaels, for the check. We're going to make you some money. And it just didn't quite grasp it for me. It was just too, the best way of saying it is it was just too juvenile. It felt like something I would have watched in high school and been like, I don't really care for it. But it did make me smile, is what I'd say. It made me smile. A lot of the jokes, they made you smile. They didn't make me laugh, but they made me smile. I could see where the humor was going. It just really wasn't my type of humor. It felt like, junior high school humor for me.
So, and I can understand where you're coming from. There's that movie, the movie with Uncle Rico in it. What's it called? Napoleon Dynamite, right?
I kept thinking of that while I was watching this.
This had a very much a Napoleon Dynamite feel with a lot of more juvenile, cartoonish stuff in it.
Right.
So it was more of a poor man's Napoleon Dynamite.
Poor man.
Well, I wouldn't go that far because there were some truly funny things in this movie. There's a couple that I'll point out that I thought were hilarious.
Please name them.
I'll name three that I thought I just crack up every time. One is when they try to train him under the water in the pool, and he's got this pull string, and he says, "I'll pull the string when you want me to come up." And they're not paying attention. They're talking about a drink, and he's flailing his arms, and the rope comes down, and then they let go, and he's just standing there. And they're like, what's going on? Pull him out, right? And I thought that was kind of funny how he's struggling, and then he just stops. Okay.
Right.
That's one of the scenes. The other one, the funniest thing in it for me, though, was when he was just not, before he figured out the plan to jump the buses, he went out to the forest and does this whole like Footloose montage thing, right?
Yeah.
And he starts flipping, and they show him flip and flip and flip and flip. And then all of a sudden he flies off the side of the mountain and he falls and he has some really nasty hits, and he keeps falling and he keeps falling. And it was funny. Like, that part I think is absolutely freaking hilarious.
That is the part of the movie that I realized it was going downhill, both literally and figuratively. It was way too long. It was like I got the little montage, little reference to the old 80s movies, and that lasted about 20, 30 seconds, and the scene went on for like 3 minutes, and it was just too long. It was a funny idea, and that's what this whole movie is like. It's like all these funny ideas. It's like there's a scene where he's talking to his brother, and he's like, "Cool beans," and he's like, "Oh, cool beans."
That's the other scene I was going to mention.
They go on and on and on, and it was funny at first. I saw the humor, but they extended it. They tried to just suck every little last ounce of comedy juice out of these scenes, and I felt like they went on too long. Initially, made me smile. Then I was like, too much.
I still laugh every time I see it. And you're right. The scene in the forest did go on a little long. I thought the flipping was the funniest part. And then when he flies down the mountain. Now, I thought flying down the mountain wasn't too long. I thought it was funnier the longer it went on. Because, I mean, he had some nasty hits. And it's when you think it's over, and then all of a sudden they would show it, and then all of a sudden he'd come and like hit the side of a tree, and they'd have that sound, and then he'd keep going. So I thought that was funny. And you're right. The scene where he was taught cool beans. That is funny, but it does go on a little too long.
Right. And
but
he got better. As his comedies have gone on, he's gotten better. I think that was his first movie, and it showed. And like I said, all these other Bill Hader, I love Bill Hader. He plays a very normal kind of character. He's a character actor. He does impressions, and he was barely doing anything out of the ordinary. He was just kind of this low-key guy, and I was like, oh man, he's really funny.
Oh, he's kind of a jerk, actually.
Okay, he was a little bit, but Danny McBride, he's over the top. He did it, but it was like he was just, I don't know, it just didn't feel like it was original, like for Danny McBride. It was kind of just, it was okay. And that's how I felt about this whole movie. It was it made me smile. Like I said, it made me smile. It was humorous. I wouldn't say it was without humor, but it was just pedestrian for me. There was nothing that the scenes that not memorable for me.
It's totally pedestrian, and that's what I like about it. It's something to sit back and it's stupid humor, and there aren't many movies I like that, but this is one of the ones that I actually do enjoy. So what would you give it as a score?
All right. So as a score, I have to give it a 6 out of 10 for a comedy. All right. I think it is. It's kind of like one of those cult classics. Like my oldest son, he'd probably find it a little bit more humorous than I was because we have a different kind of comedy taste. I'm really surprised at you that this is something, when I was watching this, I'm like, I'm surprised. Like, for a guy that doesn't like comedy, for this to be a movie that he recommended to me, I think that's your guilty pleasure little comedy. Like you said, it is. Kind of slapsticky, a little bit juvenile, a little bit, throwback to when you're young. I'm surprised that this was one of your favorite movies, but I do see.
Oh, I wouldn't say it's one of my favorite movies, but it is a comedy that I could watch time and time again and never get tired of it. And even I would only give it a 7. So it's not like a great, and the way it ends is not amazing either. It doesn't have a satisfying ending. So you're right. It's more of the idea of the whole thing. So But I thought it was something, if you've never seen it, I think it's worth at least a one-time watch, you know?
Yeah. I won't get those 2 hours back, but it was, it wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen by any means.
No, there are far worse things you could see. But all right, so that's what we have for you guys this week. We've got this is our comedy special. We had 4 films here. So we hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Hey, what's that?
Who's the comedy champ? Who's the comedy champion for the week?
Oh, who's the comedy champ?
It's the best comedy film for the other person.
Right. Yeah, well, you'd have to. The problem is I couldn't. We talked about, what people don't know is we were going back and forth one night. Have you seen this? Have you seen this? Have you seen this? So we had seen so many things that there really wasn't a whole lot to choose from. In fact, the only reason I chose Hot Rod was because we had talked about that and you'd never seen it, kind of like 50 First Dates. Right. But I had to scrounge to find the Keeping Up with the Joneses, because the other one I was going to have you do was The Nice Guys. And that's something we may have to do another comedy thing in the future and figure out what the other hasn't seen, because it's a hard category to find movies in. But yeah,
I'll humbly wear my crown. Don't worry about it. I'll humbly wear it. Next time we'll do suspense or drama, and maybe you'll have a chance to take back the crown.
Oh, if we do dramas, I've got some films if you've never seen them, but you've probably seen all the ones I would choose. But yeah. All right. Well, actually, I know there's a couple you haven't seen, so that may be an idea coming up. So. All right. So we appreciate everybody watching. We're glad you guys could make it this week. If you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button and also hit that notification bell so you'll get notifications when these videos go up. Our podcast will continue to go up every week. So you'll hear this on Spotify, the Apple Music Store, under the podcast store. So we're going to continue to do this week to week. We can't wait until movies get back into theaters, but in the meantime, we're going to continue to do the streaming until things pick back up. But we appreciate everybody who's come along for the ride. And that's all we have for you this week. I'm Aaron Fisher.
I'm Lamont Lovejoy.
See you guys next time.